At the same time as black parents have created Operation Exodus and the Metco program, the school department is responding. They do build a new school, the Joseph Lee School in Dorchester, and initially the Joseph Lee School would have been in compliance with the Racial Imbalance Act, and incidentally the school committee had sued, saying that the Racial Imbalance Act itself violated the Constitution. In 1967, the Supreme Judicial Court had said no, it did not. In 1970, the school department is going to open the Joseph Lee School and then reverses its vote, which would have made the Joseph Lee School racially balanced. In response, some black parents sue the school department. It's actually the case of Tallulah Morgan versus James Hennigan. Hennigan happened to be the chair of the school committee. However, he supported creating the Joseph Lee School as a racially balanced school, so it's somewhat ironic that his name is on this suit. And in June of 1974, federal judge W. Arthur Garrity rules that the Boston public schools have in fact maintained a segregated system. And he looks at things like the number of black teachers in the system, as well as the feeder patterns for the various schools in Boston. In fact, it's difficult to read Judge Garrity's opinion and not come to the conclusion that, yes, the school committee was operating a segregated system. They were operating a segregated system because it was within their interests to do so. The teachers supported this because certainly hiring more black teachers was going to result in the elimination of jobs for white teachers, and restructuring the school system, well, that's a subject for another day. Judge Garrity is right on the facts, I suppose, that the school committee is maintaining a system that fits the pattern or fits the definition of de facto segregation. His remedy, though, was to combine schools in different districts in order to achieve a racial balance. Ed Logue, who was the head of the Boston Redevelopment Authority, said that Judge Garrity always had the manner of a Roman proconsul trying to put down the barbarian tribes. William Bolger, the president of the Massachusetts State Senate, said that Judge Garrity had the foresight of a mackerel and the subtlety of a chainsaw. Schools had to open in September of 1974 with the schools all balanced racially by busing students around the city on the basis of their race. So, for example, Roxbury High School, that was predominantly black. In fact, Roxbury High School had closed in the 1960s precisely because the school committee did not want to maintain a completely segregated high school or an all-black high school. It is reopened, but reopened in combination with South Boston High School, which is predominantly white. And the 11th grade classes from both schools are sent to the respective other school. You're not really creating an educational environment conducive to learning in this case. You have black students being bused to an all-white school, white students being bused to what had been an all-black school, and because people in the affected communities could not attack the federal judge who lived in Wellesley or others, they will attack the school buses. In September of 1974, you have very ugly racial violence outside South Boston High School and in other places, attacks on school buses. Violence ensues in September of 1974 and continues into 1975 and 1976. In the December of 1975, a white student is stabbed inside South Boston High School, and ultimately you have the school put under the control of the federal judge. As the black parents in the 1960s had begun a campaign to get better schools for their children, and the result is, in the 1970s, the creation of a busing plan to shift students around the system on the basis of their race. It leads to a further white exodus from the system, as well as to an overall decline in the city's population in the 1970s, as parents who have an option will use it either to move out or to find alternative educational opportunities for their children. And it opens racial wounds in the city that have not entirely healed. In 1983, a pivotal mayoral race, Mel King, African American, who had been a candidate for the school committee in the early 1960s, one of the reformers, and had actually done quite well in the white neighborhoods of West Roxbury and other places, faces off against Ray Flynn, state rep from South Boston, and Flynn had been an active opponent of forced busing. But Flynn and King are both committed to the neighborhoods and to the people in the neighborhoods. And Flynn is elected mayor. Again, the schools are beyond the control of the mayor of Boston. They're under the control of the federal court. And the schools are only one part of the issue. In the late 1980s, some black residents in Roxbury, Dorchester, and the South End consider seceding from the city and forming a separate city called Mandela in honor of Nelson Mandela of South Africa, who at this time is actually in solitary confinement on Robben Island off of Cape Town. You have racial violence, racial tensions in the city with the schools as a focal point. And the judge's order in 1974, and then the judge's further, phase 1 and phase 2 of the busing decrees of the 1970s, exacerbating this problem. It's an ugly period in Boston. And in the story of the Boston public schools and their overcoming this, as today 90% of the students in the Boston public schools are students of color. And the schools themselves have not yet reached their full promise. That is, the children of Boston are not yet receiving the education that they should. There have been steps toward correcting the problems that the black community perceived in the 1960s, but again, those children who would have been students in the schools in the 1960s today are grandparents. What happens to the next generation? This is one of the great problems in Boston, how to fix the schools. In 1962, the Boston Redevelopment Authority had a plan for how to fix the schools. And in the 1980s, a new school complex opens at Madison Park High School, the John D. O'Brien School. There have been some attempts at solving this greater problem of the schools that became subsumed into this other problem of racial balance or imbalance in the schools, with a court imposing busing as a solution to the problem of the racial balance of the schools, which wasn't the problem that the black community first raised. The black community raised the problem of the schools being lousy in their neighborhoods. The schools were also lousy in the white neighborhoods, as the school system itself had not been created to educate students, but instead to create jobs for teachers and administrators. Whether another generation will be able to solve this critical problem, it's a subject, I suppose, for another day. And if we are to be optimistic about anything, I suppose we should focus our attention in improving the education that students will receive in the Boston schools.